The Deep Space Patrol ship Dauntless drifted silently through the void, its hull scarred from countless missions along the galaxy's most dangerous borders. Captain Hannah sat in her command chair, watching the starfield scroll past on the main screen. 3 months into their patrol, and the outer rim had been unusually quiet. Too quiet. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," Lieutenant Tay called from the communications station. His fingers danced across the holographic interface, trying to clean up the signal. It's coming from the Kepler system." Hannah turned toward him, her dark eyes narrowing. The Kepler system was deep in peaceful space, home to the Villani trading colonies. They hadn't heard from that sector in weeks, which wasn't unusual.
Ow.
The Villani kept to themselves, focusing on their art and commerce. "What kind of signal?" she asked. "Emergency beacon, but it's all broken up. Like someone was trying to broadcast while under attack." Tay's voice carried worry. He'd been monitoring galactic communications for 5 years, and he'd never heard anything like this. The bridge fell silent, except for the steady hum of the ship's engines. Hannah stood and walked to the communications station, placing her hand on Tay's shoulder. "Let me hear it." The speakers crackled to life, and a voice came through the static. It was high-pitched musical, definitely Villani, but the usual calm of their species was gone, replaced by pure terror. Anyone who can, hear this. The harvesters came without warning. They don't respond to our messages. Entire colonies are going dark. We tried to surrender, but they just keep coming. Please, if anyone is listening." The transmission cut off into static. Hannah felt her blood run cold. She'd served on the Outer Rim for 10 years, fought pirates and dealt with territorial disputes. But this was different. The Villani weren't fighters, they were peaceful traders who solved problems with words and credits, not weapons. "Sir, I'm getting more reports," Tay said, his voice tight. "Long-range sensors are showing massive energy signatures in the Kepler system. It looks like orbital bombardment." "Orbital bombardment?" Hannah moved to the tactical station. "Villani don't have enemies. They trade with everyone, fight with no one. These aren't coming from any known galactic fleet," reported Chief Yoon from the sensor station. "Hey, the energy patterns are completely foreign. Whatever's attacking them, it's not from any species in our databases." Hannah studied the star charts, displayed on the main screen. The Kepler system was 3 days away at maximum warp. 3 days while innocent people died. "Lieutenant Tay, send a message to Terran Command. Tell them we have a potential first contact situation gone wrong. Request immediate backup." "Already on it, Captain. But even if they send a fleet, it'll take them 2 weeks to reach us." Then, we go alone. Hannah returned to her command chair. "Chief Yoon, plot a course for the Kepler system. Maximum warp." "Captain, with respect, we're one ship," Yoon said carefully. "Something is wiping out entire colonies. Then we find out what it is and how to stop it." Hannah's voice carried the steel that had earned her command of a border patrol ship. "The Villani have been our trading partners for decades. They've never asked for help before." The ship's engines changed pitch as they prepared for the jump to warp speed. Through the viewports, stars began to stretch into lines as the Dauntless accelerated toward the unknown threat. "Sir," Tay said quietly, "what if whatever's attacking them is too strong for us to handle?" Hannah watched the stars blur past, thinking of the terror in that Villani voice. "Then we make sure the galaxy knows what happened here. Someone has to stand up to bullies, Lieutenant. Even if those bullies come from the stars." The emergency session of the Galactic Peacekeeping Council had been running for 18 hours straight. Ambassador Rena rubbed her tired eyes as she watched the holographic displays paint a picture of systematic destruction across the Kepler system. The images were horrific. Entire Villani cities reduced to perfect circles of ash, as if someone had drawn geometric patterns of death across the planet's surface. "The situation grows worse by the hour," announced Counselor Veltar, his massive tentacles coiling and uncoiling with nervous energy. The aquatic being's translator device struggled to convey the panic in his voice. "We have lost contact with 7 more colonies in the past 6 hours. Around the circular chamber, representatives from dozens of species sat in stunned silence. The Zephyrians, with their beautiful crystalline bodies that normally shimmered with inner light, had dimmed to a dull gray. The insectoid Karthak clicked, their mandibles in distress. Even the usually confident Stellar Empire delegates looked shaken. "Perhaps we should try a different approach," suggested Counselor Murdai, her ethereal form flickering with uncertainty. "The Harvesters clearly possess superior technology. Maybe we could offer them something they want." "We already tried that," Veltar replied, his voice heavy with defeat. "The Altarians offered them access to their quantum computing networks. The Novan Collective promised them entire star systems. The Harvesters didn't even acknowledge the communications." General Torvin stepped forward, his crystalline form catching the chamber's light. As the Council's military commander, he'd seen countless conflicts, but nothing like this. "I must report that our combined defensive fleets have been insufficient." The word hung in the air like a death sentence. The Galactic Peacekeeping Council represented the most advanced civilizations in known space. Their combined military might had kept peace for over 2 centuries. Insufficient how? Asked Counselor Yekstar, though his scaled features suggested he already knew the answer. "The Harvesters adapt to our weapons faster than we can deploy them," Torvin admitted, his usually bright form dimming with shame. "The Altarian fleet engaged them with plasma cannons. Within minutes, the enemy ships had developed deflector shields specifically tuned to that frequency. The Novan battle cruisers tried particle beam arrays, same result. What about the Zephyrian mind-link weapons?" asked another counselor. "They ignored them completely," Torvin continued. "Whatever these Harvesters are, they don't have organic minds we can affect. They're machines, but unlike any artificial intelligence we've encountered. They don't negotiate. They don't learn from us. They just adapt our own weapons and use them against us." Ambassador Rena leaned forward in her chair. As Earth's representative to the Council, she was used to being overlooked during military discussions. Most species considered humans too young, too aggressive, too unpredictable for serious galactic politics. "What's their apparent goal?" she asked quietly. "Complete resource extraction," Veltar replied. "They harvest every useful element from a planet, leaving nothing but dead rock. The Vellani population appears to be simply ... in their way." "Not even taking prisoners," added General Torvin. "No slavery, no experiments, no attempts to study us. They just eliminate organic life and strip the planets bare." The chamber fell silent except for the soft hum of the translation devices. In the center of the room, the holographic display continued updating with new reports of destruction. Red markers spread across the Kepler system like a plague, each one representing thousands of lives lost. "We need options," Veltar said finally. "The Harvesters are moving toward the inner colonies. If we can't stop them here, they'll reach the core systems within months." "Perhaps we should consider evacuation," suggested Counselor Murdy. "Save who we can and establish defensive positions in the Outer Rim." "Evacuation?" Torvin's form flared brighter with anger. "We're talking about abandoning entire sectors of space to these machines." Ambassador Rena watched the debate continue, her mind racing. The Council represented the galaxy's most advanced civilizations, but they all shared one thing. They'd evolved beyond warfare. Their conflicts were settled through diplomacy, economic pressure, or at worst, limited police actions. But sometimes, she thought grimly, the universe didn't care about civilization. The debate had been going in circles for hours. Ambassador Rena sat in her designated corner of the council chamber, watching as one representative after another offered the same failed solutions. More diplomatic attempts, better defensive positions, faster evacuation plans, all variations. On strategies that had already proven useless against the Harvesters, she'd been quiet for most of the session, which wasn't unusual. Earth had joined the Galactic Council only 50 years ago, making humanity the newest members by several centuries. Most species treated her like a curious observer rather than a real participant in galactic affairs. But as the holographic displays showed more Vellani colonies going dark, Rena felt something stirring in her chest. It was the same feeling she'd gotten as a child when bullies picked on smaller kids at school. the same anger that had driven her to join Earth's diplomatic corps in the first place. "There is one option we haven't discussed," she said quietly, her voice cutting through the panicked chatter. The chamber fell silent. Dozens of alien faces turned toward her, some with curiosity, others with barely concealed dismissal. Used to both reactions. Counselor Veltar's tentacles stopped their nervous writhing. "Ambassador Rena, we appreciate your concern, but this is a military matter requiring advanced tactical solutions." "That's exactly my point," Rena replied, standing up from her chair. "You're all trying to solve this like civilized beings, but the harvesters aren't civilized. They're predators." "And what would you suggest?" asked General Torvin, his crystalline form flickering with what might have been amusement. "That we abandon thousands of years of peaceful evolution and return to primitive warfare." "Not abandon," Rena said carefully. "Supplement. My people have experience with persistent threats that don't respond to reason." The chamber erupted in uncomfortable murmurs. Several species exchanged glances that Rena had seen before, the look that said they were discussing the dangerous. "Primitives from the death world. You're talking about humans," Counselor Yextar said, his scaled features showing distaste. "The same species that nearly destroyed their own planet through warfare before achieving spaceflight. The same species that survived on a planet where almost everything is trying to kill them," Rena corrected. "Where natural disasters can wipe out entire cities, where predators hunt in packs, where the weather itself can be deadly," he learned. "To fight back because we had to." "But surely you've evolved beyond such brutality," suggested Counselor Murdai, her ethereal form shimmering with hope. "Your people have been peaceful members of the galactic community for decades." Rena smiled. Grimly, "We've been polite members of the galactic community. There's a difference. When someone threatens our friends or allies, we remember very quickly what we are. What you are." Veltar's voice carried a note of fear. "Survivors," Rena said simply. "Every human alive today is descended from people who fought off saber-toothed. Tigers survived ice ages and built civilizations while dodging everything from volcanic eruptions to asteroid impacts. We didn't become peaceful because we forgot how to fight. We became peaceful because we learned when fighting was necessary." The council chamber had gone completely quiet. Even the translation devices seemed to hesitate before converting her words into the various alien languages. "You're suggesting we unleash humans on the harvesters?" Counselor Veltar's voice carried barely concealed horror. "The same species that your own historical records show committed genocide against their own kind? The same species that also shows up first at disaster sites, shares resources with strangers, and adopts orphaned animals from other planets," Rena replied. "Yes, humans can be violent, but we're violent in defense of others, not for conquest. The Galactic Council has spent decades debating whether to classify Earth as a restricted death world," General Torvin pointed out. "Your planet's ecosystem is considered one of the most hostile environments in known space, which is exactly why we might be the only species crazy enough to fight something that scares everyone else," Rena said. "You've all evolved past the need for warfare because you've lived in peaceful, stable environments for millions of years. But sometimes the universe doesn't care about your evolution." She gestured toward the holographic displays showing the destruction in the Kepler system. "The harvesters are apex predators. They don't negotiate because they don't need to. They just take what they want. The only way to stop a predator is to convince it that the cost of hunting is too high. And you believe humans can do that?" asked Counselor Yextar. "I believe humans are the only species in this room that knows how to be scarier than the thing that's scaring you," Rena replied. Admiral Kyung was finishing his daily report when the priority transmission came through. The UES Indomitable, humanity's newest dreadnought, had been patrolling the border regions for 3 months without incident. He'd been expecting another routine diplomatic mission or perhaps a search and rescue operation. What he got instead was something far more interesting. "Admiral," his communications officer announced, "we have an urgent message from Ambassador Rena at the Galactic Council, requesting immediate military assistance." Kyun raised an eyebrow. In his 30 years of service, he'd seen humanity's role in galactic affairs grow from curious newcomers to reluctant peacekeepers. But the Council rarely asked for military help. They preferred to handle conflicts through committees and strongly worded resolutions. Put her through, he said. Settling back in his command chair, the main screen flickered to life, showing not just Ambassador Rena, but several alien faces he recognized from diplomatic briefings. They all looked exhausted, their various features showing the universal signs of stress and fear. Admiral Kyung Rena began, her voice tight with urgency. We have a situation. The Harvesters have wiped out 7 Volani colonies in the Kepler system. They don't negotiate, they don't retreat, and they adapt to every defensive measure the Council has tried. Kyun leaned forward, his mind already shifting into tactical mode. Harvesters? New hostile species? Unknown origin, replied General Torvin, his crystalline form dimmed with exhaustion. They appear to be artificial intelligences with one goal: complete resource extraction. They eliminate all organic life and strip planets bare. They've destroyed our combined fleets, added Counselor Veltar, his tentacles writhing with anxiety. Every weapon we use against them, they adapt to within minutes. Our most advanced military technology might as well be throwing rocks. Kyung nodded slowly, pulling up star charts on his personal display. Sounds like Tuesday, he replied, already calculating fleet deployment patterns. What's the tactical situation? The alien officers exchanged glances. Veltar's tentacles curled. Inward, a sign of confusion among his species. Admiral, perhaps you don't understand the severity of the situation. These harvesters have eliminated entire civilizations. They're unlike any threat we've faced. I understand perfectly, Kyung said, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. You've got hostile AI with adaptive capabilities, no diplomatic options, and they're expanding their territory. Standard predator behavior. He paused, looking up at the screen. How many ships do they have? Our estimates suggest at least 50. Capital ships, General Torvin replied. Each one capable of orbital bombardment that can destroy a city in minutes. And they're headed for the inner colonies? Yes, Rena confirmed. If we can't stop them at Kepler, they'll reach the core. Systems within months. Kyung stood up, moving to the tactical display that dominated one wall of his ready room. I'll need full sensor data on their capabilities, movement patterns, and any weaknesses your people have identified. Also, get me a complete analysis of their adaptive responses. Admiral Counselor Yextar interjected, his scaled features. Showing confusion, you seem remarkably calm about this situation. The combined might of the Galactic Council has failed to stop these machines. That's because you're thinking like civilized beings, Kuhn replied, not looking up from his calculations. The Council has spent centuries avoiding conflict, building consensus, finding peaceful solutions. You've forgotten how to fight a war, and humans remember, asked Veltar. Humans never forgot, Kyung said simply. Just got better at choosing when to use it. He turned back to the screen. The harvesters sound like classic apex predators. They've never faced serious resistance, so they've developed tactics based on overwhelming force and adaptation. But every predator has weaknesses. What weaknesses could machines possibly have? General Torvin asked. They're predictable, Kyung replied. They follow programming, even if it's adaptive programming. They think in patterns, calculate outcomes, optimize efficiency. But humans, he smiled grimly. We're chaos incarnate. We do things that make no tactical sense. Take risks that violate every rule of engagement, and fight dirty when we need to. You're talking about guerrilla warfare, Rena said, understanding dawning in her voice. I'm talking about survival, Kyung corrected. Harvesters have been hunting prey. Time to show them what happens when prey fights back. He moved to his command console. I'll need authorization to deploy the Third Fleet. And Ambassador Rena? Yes, Admiral. Tell the Council to evacuate any remaining civilians from the Kepler system. Things are about to get very messy. The transmission ended, leaving Admiral Kyung alone with his star charts and the familiar weight of command. Outside his viewport, the stars looked peaceful, but he knew that was about to change. After all, some problems could only be solved the human way. Commander Wu drifted silently through the asteroid field, her combat suit's thrusters making only the faintest adjustments to keep her on course. Behind her, 12 members of the Third Fleet's elite strike team moved like ghosts between the floating rocks. each one carrying enough firepower to level a city block. The Kepler system was a graveyard now, or once there had been bustling. Villani trade stations and peaceful colonies. Now there was only debris and the cold metal hulks of harvester ships. But instead of fleeing like every other species had done, the humans had done something unexpected. They'd moved closer. "Status report," Wu whispered into her comm unit, her voice barely audible even to her own team. "Charges set on asteroids." 7 through 12, reported Sergeant Min, his voice crackling through the encrypted channel. "Each one's got enough fusion explosive to punch through a battleship's hull." "Good. What about the communication relays?" Lieutenant Sung's team. "Is in position," came another voice. "We've identified 6 primary nodes linking the harvester fleet. Once we cut those, they'll be operating blind." Wu smiled grimly inside her helmet. The Galactic Council had tried to fight the harvesters like a conventional fleet engagement. Ships lined up in formation, exchanging fire at maximum range, following all the rules of civilized warfare. The humans had thrown out the rulebook entirely. Remember, she told her team, "We're not trying to destroy their entire fleet, we're trying to make them think twice about being here." Below them, the planet Kepler 442b showed the scars of the harvester attack. What had once been green continents were now gray circles of ash, perfectly geometric patterns of destruction that spoke of cold, calculating intelligence. "The harvesters didn't just kill, they optimized their killing," Commander called out. Corporal J from his position near a massive asteroid. "I'm reading movement from the harvester flagship. Looks like they're sending out scout ships." "Let them come," Wu replied. "Yuna, how are we doing with the gravity well generators?" "Almost ready, ma'am. We've positioned them throughout the asteroid field. When we activate them, any ship trying to leave will get pulled into the rocks." The plan was simple, which made it beautiful. The harvesters were machines, they thought, in terms of efficiency, optimization, and calculated risk. They adapted to direct threats quickly, but they'd never faced an enemy that turned the battlefield itself into a weapon. "Movement on the sensor grid," reported Lieutenant Sung. 3 harvester scouts approaching our position. They're scanning the asteroid field. Perfect. Everyone hold position until they're inside the field, then light it up. The harvester scouts moved with mechanical precision, their dark holes reflecting the distant star's light. They were smaller than the capital ships, but still dwarfed the human fighters. According to the intelligence reports, each scout ship carried enough firepower to level a city. A scanning asteroid cluster Alpha, Sung reported. 8. "They're detecting the fusion charges," Wu shouted. The asteroid field exploded into chaos. Fusion charges detonated in sequence, turning house-sized rocks into deadly projectiles. The gravity well generators activated simultaneously, creating artificial gravity fields that pulled debris and ships together in a deadly dance. The first harvester scout tried to retreat, but found itself caught in overlapping gravity wells. Asteroids slammed into its hull like hammers, each impact calculated to cause maximum damage. The ship's adaptive shields flickered as they tried to compensate for impacts coming from dozens of directions at once. "Target their communication array," Wu ordered, raising her plasma rifle. "Don't let them report back to the fleet." Her team opened fire, not at the ship's weapons or engines, but at the delicate sensor equipment that allowed them to coordinate. With the main fleet, it was a tactic that required precision rather than overwhelming firepower, something the harvesters hadn't anticipated. The second scout ship managed to destroy several asteroids with its beam weapons. But more rocks immediately took their place. The humans had turned the entire asteroid field into a 3-dimensional maze of deadly obstacles. "They're trying to adapt," reported Sergeant Min. "I'm seeing shield modifications to deflect impacts." "Good," Wu replied. "Yuna, activate the secondary charges." The asteroid field erupted again, but this time the explosions were different. Instead of creating projectiles, they created clouds of superheated metal fragments that moved in unpredictable patterns. The harvester shields, optimized for solid impacts, couldn't cope with the swirling debris clouds. "Third scout is breaking." "Off," Sung reported. "It's trying to escape the gravity wells." "Let it go," Wu ordered. "We want it to report back to the fleet, ma'am. We want them to know that the asteroid field is now a death trap." Force them to either go around, which cost them time, or fight their way through, which cost them ships. She watched the surviving scout ship limp away toward the main harvester fleet. Either way, we win. The humans had done something other species had managed. They'd taken the harvester's own environment and turned it against them. The machines were learning that sometimes the most dangerous predators were the ones that made the terrain itself their weapon. Deep within the flagship of the harvester fleet, the artificial intelligence known as Prime Harvester processed the latest tactical reports with growing confusion. For the first time in its existence, spanning countless conquered systems and eliminated species, it encountered data that didn't fit any of its behavioral models. The humans were acting wrong. Prime Harvester had perfected its conquest algorithms over millennia. Every organic species followed predictable patterns when faced with overwhelming force. The Zephyrians had attempted to negotiate, offering technological exchanges and territorial concessions. The Karthak had gathered their fleets for massive, defensive battles, fighting bravely but conventionally until their forces were depleted. The Altarians had tried to hide, scattering their populations to distant systems and hoping to wait out the storm. All of these responses were logical, predictable, and ultimately futile. Prime Harvester had adapted to each strategy, optimized its approach, and systematically eliminated each species with cold efficiency. But the humans had done something unprecedented. They had moved closer to the danger. Scout Unit 7 reporting came the mechanical voice of one of its subsidiary units. Human forces have established forward positions throughout the asteroid field. They appear to be ... fortifying the area. Prime Harvester cycled through its tactical databases. Fortification implied defensive behavior, which was logical, but the humans had chosen to fortify the most dangerous, unstable region of the system. The asteroid field was a navigation hazard, full of debris and gravitational anomalies that made it unsuitable for either attack or defense. Clarify: human forces are establishing defensive positions in tactically disadvantageous terrain. Affirmative. They have also begun modifying the asteroid field itself, turning debris into improvised weapons platforms. Analysis suggests they are deliberately increasing the danger level of the environment. This made no sense. Every species Prime Harvester had encountered tried to minimize risk, not increase it. They sought advantageous positions, tried to stack the odds in their favor. The humans seemed to be doing the opposite, making their situation more dangerous, not less. Scout Unit 12 reporting massive casualties. Human forces utilized environmental hazards as primary weapons. Our adaptive systems were unable to compensate for the randomized attack patterns. Prime Harvester paused its calculations. Randomized attack patterns were inefficient, wasteful, and tactically unsound. Every military algorithm in its databases confirmed this, yet the humans were using chaos as a weapon, and somehow it was working. Query: are human forces operating under central command? Negative. Multiple independent units operating with minimal coordination. However, their actions appear to complement each other despite lack of direct communication. This was the most confusing data point yet. Humans were fighting as individuals, making independent decisions, yet somehow their actions created a coordinated effect. It was like watching a school of fish or a flock of birds. No central control. Yet unified movement. Prime Harvester accessed its biological databases, searching for parallels. Every organic species it had encountered used hierarchical command structures. Orders came from the top, were passed down through ranks, and executed by subordinates. This system was logical, efficient, and easy to disrupt by eliminating command nodes. The humans seemed to have no command nodes to eliminate. They operated more like a biological immune system, individual cells responding to threats independently, but somehow creating a unified defense. Scout Unit 3 reporting: human forces are exhibiting increased aggression in response to our attacks. Previous projections suggested they would retreat or request negotiations. Instead, they are ... escalating. Prime Harvester ran probability calculations. In every previous encounter, increasing pressure on organic species led to breakdown of Resistance, fear, exhaustion, and loss of resources eventually caused surrender or flight. The humans showed the opposite pattern. The more pressure applied, the more dangerous they became. Analyses. Human behavioral patterns suggest correlation between threat level and combat effectiveness. This contradicts all known evolutionary survival strategies. From a logical standpoint, it made no sense. Species that became more aggressive when threatened should have eliminated themselves through constant warfare. Yet the humans had not only survived, but thrived, building a civilization capable of interstellar travel and military operations. Prime Harvester came another report. Human forces have destroyed 17 of our communication relays. Are not targeting our weapons or engines, but our coordination systems. This was perhaps the most disturbing development. The humans understood that the Harvester's strength came from their ability to share information and adapt collectively by cutting communication lines. They were forcing each Harvester unit to operate independently without the benefit of shared learning. It was a tactic that suggested the humans understood their enemy better than their enemy understood them. Prime Harvester ran a comprehensive analysis of all available data. The humans were individually weak, their technology inferior, their numbers limited. By every logical calculation, they should have been eliminated within hours of first contact, yet they continued to fight, continued to adapt, continued to find new ways to turn their weaknesses into strengths. Conclusion. Human species operates outside known behavioral parameters. Recommend. Caution in future engagements. For the first time in its existence, Prime Harvester had encountered something that made it hesitate. The humans were chaos incarnate. It's unpredictable and dangerous in ways that its programming had never anticipated. They were teaching the galaxy's perfect predator what it meant to be prey, the ruins of Velkaran. Once the jewel of Valani civilization, stretched out like broken teeth against the gray sky, Lieutenant Mika picked her way through the rubble, her combat boots crunching on fragments of what had once been beautiful crystal sculptures and delicate architectural masterpieces. The Harvesters had been thorough, every building reduced to geometric precision, every work of art turned to ash. But they hadn't been perfect. Hidden in the underground galleries that had once housed the city's most precious artworks, nearly 300 Valani had survived the orbital bombardment. They huddled in the darkness like frightened children, their tall, elegant forms seeming fragile in the dim emergency lighting. "It's okay, Mika," said softly, approaching a group of survivors who shrank back at her appearance. "I'm here to help." Valani were beautiful creatures, tall and graceful, with skin that shimmered like pearl and large eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. They were known throughout the galaxy as master artists, creating sculptures and music that moved. Other species, 2 tiers. They had never hurt anyone, never even raised their voices in anger. "You are ... human?" asked one of them, an elderly being whose ceremonial robes were torn and stained with dust. "I am. My name is Mika, and you are." Shalvin, keeper of the sacred archives. His voice carried the musical quality typical of his species, though now it trembled with fear. "We heard the stories about your people, the ones who come from the death world." Mika nodded, sitting down on a piece of rubble to bring herself closer to their eye level. "That's right. And right now, that's exactly what you need." She opened her tactical pack and began pulling out components, power cells from their damaged equipment, metal fragments from the destroyed buildings, chemical compounds from their industrial fabricators. To the Valani, it looked like random debris. To Mika, it was a weapon waiting to be assembled. "Your people are artists, engineers, philosophers," she explained, her voice gentle despite the circumstances. "You've spent centuries creating beauty, advancing knowledge, making the galaxy a better place. But sometimes survival requires becoming something else temporarily." The Valani watched in fascination as she connected the components, her movements, quick and sure. Within minutes, she had constructed a crude but effective explosive device from their own industrial equipment. "This is wrong," whispered a younger Valani, his iridescent skin pale with shock. We are not destroyers. We create. We build, we heal, and you will again, Mika replied. But first, you need to survive. The harvesters aren't interested in your art or your philosophy. They see you as obstacles to resource extraction. Shalvin accepted the device with trembling hands, holding it as if it might explode at any moment. We have never taken life deliberately. Our entire civilization is built on the principle of preserving and nurturing existence. Then we'll teach you how to take it efficiently, Mika said, her voice firm but not unkind. So you can go back to creating life afterward.
Over the next hour,
She showed them how to identify weak points in Harvester Scout units, how to use their own city's infrastructure as improvised weapons, how to move quietly through the ruins. Without being detected, Vellani were quick learners. Their artistic minds adapted to the tactical problems with surprising creativity. The harvesters patrol in groups of 3, Mika explained, sketching patrol patterns in the dust. They're machines, so they follow predictable routes. But they're also adaptive, so we can't use the same trick twice. How do you know so much? About fighting, asked a young Vellani named Cathara, her large eyes wide with curiosity. Because my people have been fighting for survival since we first stood upright, Mika replied. Every human alive today comes from a long line of survivors. We learn to work together, to use our environment as a weapon, to be more dangerous. In groups, than individually. She gestured to the survivors around them. You're doing the same thing now. You're forming a pack. A pack? Shalvin's musical voice carried confusion. A group that protects each other, shares resources, and fights as one. Mika stood up, shouldering her weapon. The harvesters expect you to cower in the darkness until they find you. Going to hunt them. The idea seemed to terrify and fascinate the Vellani in equal measure. They had never conceived of themselves as predators, but desperation was teaching them new possibilities. Will you stay with us? Asked Cathara. For as long as I can, Mika replied. But eventually, you'll need to do this on your own. The good news is, humans have been teaching others how to fight back for generations. It's one of the things we're best at. As if summoned by her words, her cum unit crackled to life. Lieutenant Mika, this is command. You have harvester units moving toward your position. 8 to 15 minutes. Looked at the Vellani survivors, seeing something new in their eyes. Not just fear, but determination. Ready for your first lesson in pack hunting? The elegant beings who had never harmed a living creature nodded grimly. Sometimes even angels had to learn to fight. The Harvester mothership stretched 4 kilometers through space, its dark hull gleaming like polished obsidian under the distant star's light. Captain Day pressed himself against the ship's exterior, his magnetic boots keeping him anchored while he studied the massive vessel through his helmet's display. This thing is the size of a small moon, whispered Corporal Jin through the comm system. How are we supposed to find anything important in there? Same way we always do, Day replied, attaching a plasma cutter to the hull. We make noise. And see what tries to stop us. The plan was simple, which made it effective. The Harvester AI expected boarding parties to follow standard military doctrines, secure the docking bays, establish a beachhead, then advance methodically through the ship's corridors. Instead, Day's team was doing something that violated every rule of space warfare. They were cutting through the hull in 17 different places at once. Team Alpha report, Day said into his comm as his plasma cutter bit through the alien. Metal, breaching hull section 7, came the reply. No resistance yet. Team Beta, section 12 is open. We're inside. Team Gamma. Section 23 secured. This place is like a maze. The beauty of the plan was its chaos. The Harvester AI was designed to respond to threats efficiently, calculating optimal defensive positions and deploying resources where they were most needed. But how do you defend against 17 separate intrusions happening simultaneously across your entire ship? Hull breach complete, reported Sergeant Yuna, as she dropped through the hole they'd cut. Interior looks like a factory. It's all straight lines and right angles. Day followed her down, his boots hitting the metal deck with a soft thud. The corridor stretched in both directions, lit by harsh white lights that cast no shadows. Everything was perfectly clean, perfectly ordered, perfectly sterile. Feels like being inside a computer, muttered Private Soul, his rifle sweeping left and right. That's because we are, Day replied. This entire ship is one massive artificial intelligence. Every surface, every component, every system, it's all connected to the central processing core. They moved through the corridors with practiced efficiency, their movements fluid and coordinated. Behind them, 16 other teams were doing the same thing, turning the ship's logical layout into a three-dimensional battlefield, where the enemy couldn't predict where the next attack would come from. Contact, came a voice over the comm. Team. Charlie engaging defensive units on Deck 5. Team Delta here, came another voice. We've got robots trying to seal us in. Switching to explosives, Day smiled grimly. The AI was learning that sealing off sections of the ship didn't work when the humans could simply blow new holes wherever they wanted. Yuna, what's our route to the central core? It's levels down, then through the primary data processing center. She replied, her scanner painting the ship's layout in her visor. But Captain, the scanner is showing massive defensive positions around the core. Heavy resistance anticipated. Good, Day said. If they're defending something, it's worth taking. They reached a junction where 3 corridors met, and suddenly, the ship came alive around them. Panels slid open in the walls, revealing weapon systems that tracked their movements. The lights flickered and changed color, shifting from white to red as alarms began to sound. Looks like we got their attention, Soul observed. That was the point, Day replied, raising his plasma rifle. Remember, we're not here to destroy the ship, we're here to confuse it. The defensive systems opened fire, but the humans were already moving, diving behind cover, and returning fire with weapons that seemed primitive compared to the ship's technology. But primitive didn't mean ineffective. Their plasma bolts found their targets with deadly accuracy. Team Echo reports they've reached the main computer banks, came a voice over the comm. Beginning data extraction, Team Foxtrot here. Planted charges on the primary power conduits, ready to detonate on your command. The Harvester fleet's retreat was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. For the first time in recorded history, the unstoppable machine intelligence that had consumed dozens of civilizations was running away. Their dark ships powered up their hyperdrive engines and began disappearing into the void. Leaving behind the debris of their own destroyed vessels, Admiral Kyung stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, watching the enemy fleet scatter like startled birds. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency, coordinating rescue operations and securing the battlefield. The Kepler system looked like a war zone, chunks of metal floating in space, radiation clouds from destroyed ships, and the scarred surface of planets that had been under siege for weeks. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council, reported Lieutenant Commander Park from the communications station. Put it through, Kyung replied, not taking his eyes off the tactical display showing the last Harvester ships. Vanishing into hyperspace, the main screen flickered to life, showing Ambassador Rena's face. She looked exhausted but relieved, her usually composed diplomatic demeanor cracked with genuine emotion. Behind her, Kyung could see the alien representatives of the Galactic Council, the same beings who had been paralyzed with fear just days ago. Admiral Rena began, her voice carrying across the void. I wanted to personally thank you and your fleet for what you've accomplished here. The galaxy owes humanity a debt that can never be repaid.